Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from thousands of successful individuals from around the world. I'm your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm delighted to welcome a very accomplished professional from Chicago, USA, Mr. Justin Dauer. Justin, welcome to the show.
Yeah, Ashutosh, great to be here.
Thank you. Justin is the founder of Anomali by Design. He's a design leader, an author, and a speaker. He speaks internationally on culture and design, and he's an author. And all of you know I'm very partial to authors. He's an author of two books, In Fulfilment and The Designer's Journey. So Justin, before we talk design, tell me about your journey in brief and what initially drew you to the field of design, and how's your perspective on design evolved over your career?
Yeah, it's a fantastic question to start. And design for me has kind of been on my radar pretty early on. Some people have late, career shifts over to a given career path. Design was on my radar pretty much in my formative years in high school. I was in a study hall class, and in the back I saw some design projects, and I asked the teacher about them, and she kind of explained to me what design was and how it was different from fine art. I had taken fine art classes at that point, and she said, we're visually problem solving. And I thought that is such an intriguing thing, both using my brain and using my artistic side at the same time to merge and solve problems. And from that point on, it's been, besides being in-house, out of house, working at agencies, Fortune 5 companies, it's been pretty linear in this fact that design has been the baseline through which my career has spoke from. So design leadership, as you said, working my way up through that point, and now having founded my own small design consultancy as well.
Amazing, thank you. I've never heard this definition of design, visually problem solving, and I think it's so brilliant. Thank you for sharing.
It is, yeah.
So how do you define creative culture, and why is it crucial for successful design teams?
I think creative culture is an absolutely essential thing as an entity as well as a concept. In my first book, it had two editions, Cultivating a Creative Culture, and then the second edition was called Creative Culture. Very much written about that theme. And to me, a creative culture, if I had to absolutely define it, is a planned, living, nourished ecosystem of support and engagement that facilitates our success. And I say plan because I feel like a creative culture is designed to be that way. It doesn't just exist by happenstance. It is the embodiment of a business's values and their ethical statements. And it should facilitate an employee's evolution and support their individualism as much as humanly possible.
Well said. And one of the things that I've often wondered when it comes to designers is, how do you balance staying true to your core set of values while adapting to new trends and technologies in design?
It's a non-trivial feat because we're kind of thrown a curveball, or something new is evolving, every other day. So I think consistent checks about what your values are. I think that comes first and foremost. What are my values? How do I prioritize them? How do they align to my work? And I think consistently having checks and balances of, this value is really important to me. Is it fulfilled? Am I working incongruously with something that's moderately important to me? I'm developing a great portfolio, but at the same time, I'm working on a product that is not, the highest ethical, moral fiber, let's say. I think consistent checks and balances in that capacity are invaluable.
And what would you say has been a pivotal moment in your career that may have influenced you?
Maybe around 7, 8, 9, 10 years ago at this point. I worked for a Swedish design agency. And I was tasked with, I was their first director of design, building out the creative practice in North America in the Chicago office, and being exposed to Swedish values was an absolute revelation for me. The egalitarianism, the support, the respect, pausing in the middle of the day for a cup of coffee and everyone very literally getting up and coming to the table and breaking bread and having a conversation. That as an American employee, that melted my brain. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. So that was a pivotal moment for me in shifting that it is okay to slow down. It is okay to connect. It is okay to not be defined by my output.
Fascinating. Could you also talk a little bit about the concept of being medium agnostic in design and how this could influence your work?
This very keenly influences my work as well as the way my agency Anomali by Design creates. And when I say medium agnostic, that is to say I'm not married to any given tool, or we're not married to any given form of output. If we're running a workshop with an organization, it's not to say I'm going to come in, we're absolutely going to use Post-it notes, or absolutely going to use a whiteboard. Maybe we're using different weights of fabric to intimate hierarchy. Maybe we're, the Legos is a tried and true thing at this point, but effectively getting from point A to point B and not having a set series of steps, because I feel like you're forcing a client or an engagement into a box at that point. So creating with whatever makes the most sense, whatever is going to stimulate the most thought and get us to the best outcome.
Well said. And from your viewpoint, Justin, what are some of the emerging trends in design that professionals should pay attention to?
Yeah, I think the elephant in the room in that capacity is AI and Gen AI. So being aware of, not intimidated by, certainly being aware of, but again, we'll probably come back to this idea of being a student of your discipline. Digging in, figuring out how it can complement your workflow, figuring out how to make this not the only tool you use, of course, but it's something that can help you be a more effective designer and creative thinker, and not being threatened by it. I think that's just a natural human reaction. Here comes this tool and this way of thinking, this technology that has matured incredibly fast and has been adopted in tools incredibly fast with a high success rate, but using it to your benefit rather than feeling daunted by it.
Well said. And my logical next question is, what has been the most challenging aspect of being a perpetual student of design, and how do you handle this?
Well, I very much, practice what I preach in terms of what I just said. So I'm always curious. I process things in small bites. That is to say, I don't view AI or how that might take my job as this big amorphic thing that I can't figure out. I kind of take small bites, so I'm able to not be anxiety induced by it. I'm able to better process it. So not being overwhelmed by anything. I think we just talked about AI here, but certainly over the course of my career, always being curious, always striving to learn, always being a student of my discipline. That's really helped me and drive my evolution.
Fascinating. So I want to come back to AI a little more.
Sure.
How do you see the integration of AI and machine learning influencing design processes and outcomes? Because one of the areas that people do talk about that AI may disintermediate is design.
Right. And I think removing the human from design, and I think is the biggest mistake we could possibly make. I think, again, using AI and Gen AI as a tool, or maybe automating processes, to help expedite our workflow or facilitate taking on new ways of approaches or new ways of thinking. I think that's the sweet spot where AI should come into play. But skipping the testing of usability testing, or skipping research because we have AI, and AI can come up with a profile or persona. That is where I think we're hitting a wall when that kind of thinking happens. Substituting core learnings and substituting core essential processes to help us connect with our audience or our environment, whatever the given project is. I think that's where the pitfalls come into play.
And do you see this as a fait accompli that, designers need to just accept it? Or do you think there are any other ways for them to better prepare for the evolving technology that's coming into all our lives?
I think it needs to be understood, certainly accepted as a tool. Again, I'll say, I think it's in any modern job interview or discussion at this point, comfort with AI, Gen AI caliber tools, by and large is something that's going to come up. So being familiar with it, understanding the nuances of it, understanding how it can benefit a workflow, or again, be used in an ethical way to not substitute human or environmental connection. I think that's the kind of again, I'll say the sweet spot by which to have a harmonious relationship with AI.
Mm. Okay, so now let's come back to the next set of questions. We come back to the human aspect. What
Sure.
role does empathy play in your design process?
Empathy and compassion, I think, are essential values to have in a design process. And we can't empathize with, every possible scenario or every possible human being, because we can, we're not, everyone is unique and has unique experiences. That's why I say I complement that with compassion. But I think I like to define design as connection made manifest. I think design is a product. Design is an app icon. Design is a community center. Design is a way of thinking about a creative culture. So that's why I think, having a compassionate lens through the way we're creating and crafting and arriving at our outcomes is essential to not just think beyond our own personal use case, but also to help best connect with those we are creating for.
Mm-hmm. And can you talk to me a little bit about a project where human-centered design principles significantly impacted the outcome?
Certainly. When I was a vice president of design within a company that was owned by CVS Health, and again, they're a Fortune 5 corporation in the States, so huge. We worked on a product that helped people manage their benefits and enroll in healthcare. So, there's like a period in the States called open enrollment, where you kind of go in and you select your healthcare plan, and if you have pre-existing conditions and what doctors are in your network. And the tool that we worked on was the tool to go online and do that. And it's a very complex process, but the tool was to make it as intuitive and not harmful or threatening as humanly possible. One thing we leveraged in a human-centered design thinking caliber capacity was our call center was also on premises. So I would have my team go up and actually sit on these calls as much as, privacy allowed, and hear people actually calling in and having trouble with the software that we were working on, or not being able to access their benefits, or having being a caregiver for someone who was, had health challenges, and feeling that actual genuine emotion of the people who are using our tool. And again, I mentioned compassion and empathy and seeing past our own use case. And the team would always come down affected by that. I had my designers and my researchers and my developers go up there and listen to those calls, because that humanizes in totality what we are working on. And it's not just about lines on paper, and it's not just about meetings and iteration and stakeholders. It is about people at the end of the day in that capacity. And certainly being mindful that we're a business as well. But that to me was the definition of practicing human-centered design. Just listening, just pausing with intent, connecting with people who are using our tool, and really understanding the implications of our decisions.
Great example. Thank you. So one more question related to design, and then I'll move to your book. What advice would you give to designers to stay relevant and continually evolve their skills?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question as well. And we mentioned values before, and I mentioned the prioritization of values and how harmonious or not they might be with an organization. I feel like a most essential value for a designer has to be humility. And I mentioned before, you asked me about being a student of my discipline and my craft and how that helps me evolve. I think being humble and understanding we don't have all the answers, and listening to objective feedback and evolving from that. And when a new tool or technology comes along like AI, not being again, a very valid reaction, threatened by it, but understanding how it can benefit our workflows and creating, and also the considerations of talking back to the business about it. But being humble, staying humble, not defining myself as I am the authoritative thought leader of design, but I am a student. I have experience in design, but I'm not the expert of design. I think those are very fine lines and nuances to kind of toe and practice in actions over words.
Fantastic, thank you. So let's move to your book, In Fulfilment, The Designer's Journey.
Sure.
Your book suggests a personal exploration. Can you share a key personal insight from your journey that led to this book?
Well, I think, fulfillment is a term and a concept, but I think there are many facets to it. If fulfillment was the jewel, I think there's, like I said, value identification. There is understanding that our craft is about connection. There's understanding that connection is just bigger than us. Certainly, as designers, thinking through the designer lens, effective output, a great portfolio is one thing, but also understanding if I am not connected to my work, those who are engaging with what I create also will likely not be connected with my work. So having an understanding of all those facets as I've gotten further in my career, was a direct contributor to me not taking on another very senior role within design and building out a team again when I had that offer and deciding to start my own practice. Because I know the environment in which I best create. We talked about a creative culture. I know what my values are, and I know who I want to work with in a design capacity. And I'm able to craft the environment that I best know I can do my best work by being a founder in that capacity. So working with people that stimulate thought, that challenge me, again, because I'm certainly not the expert. I have expertise, and I genuinely value being challenged and evolving. So all those things kind of congealing around being fulfilled in my environment, being fulfilled in who I work with, being fulfilled in what I create. I had a little nugget in my first book, Creative Culture, about a leader going through the transition of fulfillment, being evolving from being defined by their hands-on craft to helping those on their team grow and achieve their goals. And I thought, there's something more to that to explore. And I just kind of started looking at my own journey, and that kind of amalgamated into the book that we have today.
Fascinating. And my last question to you, Justin, how has writing and sharing your insights influenced your practice and philosophy in design?
Well, it's helped me distill my thoughts and my practices and my tactics and my beliefs into very digestible, actionable themes, I will say. And it's been, it's been an invaluable process for me to, it's like, if you're putting a course together, you have all these things in your mind and you want to get somebody from point A to point B, but how do you break it down into very logical and digestible and actionable tactics? So it's a personal piece, and that I leverage the power of storytelling points across my career. And those I've spoken with, of course, as well, for a well-rounded viewpoint to connect with readers. But it also very distinctly has achievable outcomes and a framework that I very much believe in called Make Meaningful Work, to help people connect with their environment and find the best means of creating. And it goes from step one of being a junior in your career through ultimately achieving a level of design leadership and walking that entire path. So I'm very proud of it, and I appreciate when folks pick it up and I get feedback from it. I'm always open to feedback. So I put that out to your listeners as well. I welcome any and all feedback. That's how I grow and evolve. But the writing, and you're an incredibly accomplished author. I'm sure that resonates with you. It helps you. It's a personal evolution, as well as seeing others rewarded from the material is really something else.
And I'm going to ask you one more question, since you mentioned storytelling.
Sure.
How important is storytelling in design?
I think having a sense of narrative and a sense of connecting with folks, not just via our hand output, via wireframes and design, but being able to connect with people on a personal level, a genuine level. I think a sense of storytelling is absolutely essential. And that's why, when I'm a big, one thing I've spoken about a lot in the past is alternate forms of inspiration beyond, if I'm a designer, just like Googling top design trends 2024, being inspired by the world around us, being inspired by alternate forms of media. Like you said, a medium agnostic before. So for example, one thing I like designers to take a look at are comic books. How are they telling a story from page 1 to page 20? How are they doing that with paneling and visual communication and with a finite amount of words? I think looking at these different forms of media and ways of communicating is invaluable for a designer. And I think in terms of storytelling, that's absolutely invaluable as well.
Well said. Well said. Thank you. And on that note, Justin, I just want to say thank you so much for speaking to me about your journey. Thank you for speaking to me about design. I think I learned many interesting things from you. I love the definition, as I said in the beginning of our program. Design is a visually problem solving. I think that's a phenomenal definition of design. Thank you for speaking to me about, being medium agnostic. Thank you for speaking to me about the design processes. Thank you for speaking to me about human-centric designs. And finally, thank you for speaking to me about your book, In Fulfilment, The Designer's Journey. Thank you again and good luck.
Thank you, Ashutosh.
Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.